Shalom, guys. Welcome back to another episode here. Just Shove Your Ministries with Casa de Israel Yarah. Thank you again for being there. Today we're going to talk about Noah, the flood, uh, in the book of Bereshit, Genesis. We're going to focus on the beginning and what happened, right? Last week we spoke about two elements in the creation narrative, right, which was the materialistic. What is it for? What is it made of? The components, right? The matter, that dead matter that we usually focus on, and then the matter in which we focus on the meaning, the purpose, the function, right? What is the design that God intended? What is the purpose that God intended everything to be? And so that's what we received in Genesis 1:1, how it was fashioned, the order and the function that it was given, and we also saw, if you read on from chapter 2, 3, and 5, you saw how men sins, right, and distorts this creation and forgets the purpose of what matters, right? And so the idea that we're trying to understand and follow is, what is man's purpose and what is man's meaning and function in creation, right? How do we attach ourselves back to design and not distort it and make it our own, right? Because even though we are capable and we have been created in the image and design in that image, we have to follow that image. We cannot become an image of ourselves, because we have no power over creation unless the Creator gives us that opportunity and that ability. So Noah's flood happens and occurs because of a very important condition, which is disobedience, wickedness. Okay, so we're going to dive into that. So let's get started. So like I said, we're going to talk about Noah. We're going to start with the PowerPoint, and then we'll read. We get a little bit of context. Why are we here, and what does the text reveal to us? What is it? What is it saying? Right? There's a lot of natural details that are being expressed, and a lot of emotions given to us by Adonai because of creation's decision to walk off and walk away from the meaning and the purpose. Okay, so like I said, Noah starts in Genesis 6 verse 9 through 11:32. The Haftarah portion of the prophets is chapter Isaiah chapter 54 verses 1 through 55 verse 5, and the Brit Hadashah portion is Matthew chapters 24 verse 36 to 46. Okay, now the biblical account, right? The book of Genesis tells us of a divine decision to wipe out mankind because of the corruption and injustice on earth. However, a righteous and blameless man named Noah was to be saved from the flood. God communicated his intentions to him and instructed him to build an ark to provision it and take aboard his family, together with male and female representatives of the animals, birds, and creeping things. When he was done, the flood waters came upon the earth, carrying the ark above the highest mountain peaks, so that all the earthly existence was blotted out. God's purpose having been accomplished, right? The rains ceased, the waters receded, and the ark came to rest upon a mountain top. After a time of 40 days, Noah sent out the first raven, then a dove to reckon Seder, the earth. On the third attempt, the dove returned no more to the ark, and Noah knew that it was safe to disembark. This he did as soon as he received the divine order, and he promptly offered sacrifices to God. Now, it says in chapter 6, before we get to the Torah portion, right? Part of last week's Torah portion, it says the son of man married the daughters of men. And so this is a direct result of Adam's sin and being casted out of that garden. Now he has to work and he has to manifest the fruit of the ground, but now it's not like in the garden where it worked as it was designed. Now he has to make the design work for him, and he is not a creator. So he has to figure this out on his own, right? And so in that process, he has Cain and Abel, and from Cain and Abel, there is a situation in which Cain kills Abel, right? And then sin starts to grow, right? The from disobedient to killing, and now the daughters of men, or and the sons of God, right? In the narrative, have united. And so this is kind of what starts this downward spiral, right? Because there was hope, right, with Seth and all that generation, but now because of them joining the women, right, the daughters of men, it says the major interpretive issue is the identification of these men and women, assuming that these verses offer a primary reason for the terrible wickedness in human society. The secondary issue is to determine what transgression these marriages cause. There are three leading proposals for the identification of the sons of God, right? So in the narrative, we have options, right? So the first option is the first is that there were heavenly beings consumed by lust. Angels cohabited with human women, thereby transgressing the boundary between divine and the human realms. The offsprings from these unions possess extraordinary abilities, lacking moral constraints. They use their abilities to promote wickedness. So that's a perspective that is out there, right? So we're going to look at all perspectives, right? Because we're learning, we're trying to understand and decipher what is the purpose, what is the function, what is the meaning, right? Second proposal is that the sons of God were the mighty rulers of old, flaunting their power. They built harems by marrying whomever they wish. Thus, their sin was polygamy, which led to rapid increase in population. So that is a perspective. Also, the third possibility is that the sons of God were the men of Seth line. The daughters of men were the offspring of Cain. These women from the rebellious line of Cain led the Sethites into a pleasure of sin, thereby over time squelching the worship of the one God Yahweh. And so this perspective is very vivid because remember, when we see the creation narrative and we see that these stories and historical events are being written for Israel. Remember, Israel has exited Egypt by mistake. And so they are in the desert, and now Moses is receiving all this so that when Israel becomes that nation and is in the land of Israel, they have a foundation, and they have a narrative and a story and a creation narrative, right? Because remember, all the ancient Near Eastern cultures had a creation narrative and it had a flood narrative. And so here God is revealing Moses for Israel so that Israel, through them, people will know, okay, this is what the account was. Now, in the account, we learn why it happened, right? That is a message for us because by faith, we, to an extent, believe that this occurred, right? Because we believe that this is the creation narrative, and this is why the flood occurred, and this is why we are part of the people of Israel, right? As we read on in the Bible, which is a lot. And so these stories are giving Israel an identity and an idea of where do they come from and where does their God come from, right? Because just like other nations, Israel has a God, but their God is true. And so this is him describing how they are going to portray creation, the flood, and their descendancy in history. Okay, so in chapter 6, it also talks about how God will not abide, or his spirit will not abide with men, meaning that he will not suspend judgment, right, from men anymore. Right? And here God is very heartbroken, right? It says, in this second section, Yahweh expresses his resolve to wipe out all humans and animals because of the gross wickedness on earth. Although God's goal that humans fill the earth was being realized, his desire that they live together in harmony had been shattered. Humans hurt humans, and people satisfy their own pleasure by oppressing others. This terrible condition required the Creator to intervene with judgment. The stark contrast between God's coming on both judgment and mercy is amplified by a play on the Hebrew letters. Nakum, right, was grieved, wiped out. Macha, Noach, and found favor. Chen, right? Yahweh saw that wickedness in society had reached an interlude level. This assessment stands in bold contrast to the sixth day of creation when God saw all that he had made was very good. Now, every inclination of the thoughts in the hearts of humans was only evil all the time. Inclination means one's orientation or disposition. Thought is literally heart. For the Hebrew took the heart as the center of a person's thinking. Feeling and willing. Also, thoughts refer to plans that are about to be acted on, not to imagination that have little likelihood of ever becoming reality. So here is saying that the Hebrew has function instead of imagination. So when it says they had they were pursuing everything in their heart and it was evil, it was meaning that in their heart they desired to do bad and they were willing to do bad and they were doing bad. And so creation had become so corrupt that they were hurting one another, hurting their offsprings, which was in contrast or it was against what the design was, right? We were supposed to become fruitful, multiply in the garden in Eden. Okay? Now, this terrible state of human society grieved, which in Hebrew is lichem, Yahweh, motivating him to take a different course in the way he was relating to humanity. The base and demeanor of those who bore the image of God filled God's heart with pain so that God regretted having made humans, right? God's response to human injustice reveals his intimate concern about how those who bear his image think and behave. Furthermore, this wording informs us that in bringing universal judgment on the earth, God did not act out of cold calculation or judgment with indifference. So what is described here is that when it says that God regretted, it was more not so much of regret creating men. It was more of a painful, sadness that man was not manifesting their potential and design. That due to the sin of Adam and Cain, man had solely focused on their desire and their own image and forgotten the purpose and the meaning of creation and their purpose and meaning in it. And so they had corrupted everything. They were basically throwing everything away in their own desire. Okay? Now, in this narrative, there's water, right? Because there's a flood. And so in creation, we saw the narrative is that the Spirit of God was hovering over the depths, right? And then the separation, the expansion of the waters, right? From the waters from the bottom to the top. And so there's an explanation there in Genesis. And so remember, this is an ancient mindset. The way that it is being described in Genesis and in this introduction to the people of Israel is this is what you guys are going to understand as creation. But in that time, there was questions about creation, and they had many mythological and cosmological and cosmogonical stories. So it says one of the questions was what kept the solid sky suspended, and they believed that the sky was solid, okay, above the earth and held back the heavenly waters. What kept the sea from overwhelming the land, right? Or what prevented the earth from sinking into the cosmic waters? These were the questions people asked in the ancient world, and the answers they arrived at are embodied in the cosmic geography. Okay, so Egyptians and Mesopotamian, Canaanites, Hittites, and Israelites all thought of the cosmos in terms of tiers. The earth was in the middle, with the heavens above and the netherworld beneath. In general, people believed that there was a single continent that was disc-shaped. Some thought that this continent had high mountains at the edges that held the sky. So you will see pictures later. Oh, right here. So you see that this is a perspective of how they saw the world, okay? How there was water, basically. The globe was water, the earth, and then mountains will hold that structure as it is described here and also here, okay? So this is how they viewed it, okay? Okay, let's continue. So the heavens were primarily the place where the gods dwelled. In Mesopotamia literature, Adapa ascends there to meet with Anu. The heavenly temples of the great gods were located there. Variations permit 1, 3, or 7 levels of heaven, usually with the purpose of portraying distinct levels for the habitation of different deities relative to their hierarchical position within the pantheon. In Mesopotamia, there were theories regarding distinct distance within the heavens and the shape of the heavens. In Canaan, people believed the gods lived at the top of the mountains, but this is not a contradiction because the heavens are at the top of the mountains, which is something very interesting that we will see in the reading. Okay, now these are elements that were highlighted, of course, like we see all the time. The sky, which was the boundary between heaven and the earth, and I will call what we call the sky. Its main function is to hold back the waters above. Some mountains are identified as the intersecting the sky and perhaps holding it. The weather and waters above. The waters above held back the sky and are represented iconographically in the Mesopotamian Samash plaque and a number of Egyptian paintings, particularly in the sarcophagi. In Mesopotamia, Marduk assigns guards to keep the heavenly waters from flooding the earth, right? This is part of their flood narrative. These waters are the remnants of Tiamat's body, which was split to form the waters above, right? So this is their cosmological perspective. It says the celestial bodies, which are the sun, the moon, and the stars and planets, were all considered in the same category and were believed to occupy the same region in the air, since they could be seen beneath the sky. Mesopotamians viewed the stars as an engraved on the underside of the sky and assigned them paths of movements, right? Which is very interesting. With the heavens divided into 36 zones, constellations were recognized and named, including the zodiacal constellation. So it's very interesting how they will see the stars and they will trace the path, right, for the gods. And in Egypt, that's how they saw how the sun will pass through the waters in the sky and sail so that the moon could come. So it's very interesting, right? Mountains at the edge of the edges of the known world were viewed as intersecting the sky, perhaps supporting it, having roots in the netherworld. Sometimes they were viewed as boundaries to the cosmic waters. The Egyptians also sometimes thought of mountains as holding up the sky, though other models can be found. Above the earth was the expanse of the sky, separated from the earth by the air, and held aloft like a great plate by 4 supports at the corners of the earth. So those are the the pillars, right? They also believe them to be pillars. Now the sea, the cosmic sea, which encircles the land, the waters beneath the earth, and the waters above were not considered separate and distinct bodies of water. That there was fresh water and salt water was recognized, but this did not suggest separation. After all, the freshwater rivers flow into the saltwater seas. Metaphors such as locks, bolts, bars, nets, and so on were used to express how the sea was kept in its place. These were all established and maintained by a deity who ultimately set the boundaries. In the flood tradition, the ancient Near East, the waters that flood the earth came from a variety of sources. Now, in the creation narrative, right, Genesis, it says, I'm going to bring flood waters, Mabul, on the earth. 7 days from now, I will send rain, Mamtir, on the earth. Genesis 7:4 says, on that day, all the springs of the great deep, Mayenot Tehom, burst forth, and the floodgates, Arubot, of the heavens were opened, and rain Geshem fell on the earth. In all these texts, it is the cosmic waters of every sort that are involved in the flood. The act of creation involved setting boundaries for the cosmic waters. In the flood, the restraints were removed, thus bringing destruction. And now, it's a lot of reading, and I got through it pretty fast. I hope that I went fast so that you can understand, but slow so you can comprehend. Enough. Okay. So, we saw how it's separated, right, in the beginning. Everything has function, and then God says, now that it has function and is created, heaven informs creation, creation expresses heaven, heaven covers creation, and creation supports heaven. And in that cycle, manifesting heaven, earth, there is a perfect balance, right? That is the design. Man decided to break that cycle. And so now that in the flood is what does the judgment, right? Because that was what held the cosmic order in this moment in time, and their disobedience causes them to have judgment. That is a perspective of a way of seeing it, okay, visually, so you can understand what is happening. Okay, now let's go into the reading so that we can close out. It says, ונוח מצא חן בעיני אדוני אלה תולדות נוח איש צדיק תמים היה ברורותה את האלוהים התהלך נוח. And in English, it says the following. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. These are the records of the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his time. Noah walked with God. Noah became the father of 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in the sight of God, and the earth was filled with violence. Okay? Now, it says here, behold, I even am bringing the flood water upon the earth, right? Verse 17. To destroy the flesh of which the breath of life from under the heavens, everything that is on the earth shall perish. Okay? But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall enter the ark, and you and your sons and your wife and your son's wife with you. And so he is given an instruction of how he's going to do this perfectly. Right? He's saying that you will have 7 of the pure and 2 of the impure, right, of the animals. And so it's very interesting because in the flood narrative, chapter 7, it says, and the Lord said to Noah, enter the ark, and you and your household and you alone have seen to be righteous before me in this time. You shall take with you every clean animal by 7, and a male and female, and an animal that are not clean 2, male and female. Also the birds of the sky be 7, male and female, to keep offering alive to face all the earth. For after 7 more days I will send rain on the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and I will blot out from the face of the land every living thing that I have made. Noah did according to all that the Lord commanded him. Now Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters came upon the earth. Noah, his son, and his wife's son's wife with him entered the ark because of the water of the flood. Now it says, it came about after 7 days, the water of the flood came upon the earth in 600 years of Noah's life. In the 2nd month, on the 7th day of the month, on the same day, all the fountains of the great deep burst open, and the floodgates of the sky were open. Right? The rain fell upon the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. On the very same day, Noah and Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the son of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them, enter the ark. They and every beast after its kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth after its kind, and every bird after its kind, all sorts of birds. So they went into the ark, Noah, by twos of all flesh, in which was the breath of life. Those that enter, the male and female all flesh, enter as God had commanded him, and the Lord closed it behind him. Right, so God closed it. And it says, then the flood came upon the earth for 40 days, and the water increased and lifted up the ark, so that it rose above the earth. Water prevailed and increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark flooded on the surface of the water. The water prevailed more and more upon the earth, so that all high mountains everywhere under the heavens were covered. The water prevailed 15 cubits higher, and the mountains were covered. All flesh that moved on the earth perished, birds, cattle, beasts, every swarming thing that swarms upon the earth, all mankind, and all that was on dry land, all whose nostrils was the breath of the Spirit of life, died. Right? And so it's a very important statement that is being made here, okay? Because as we saw, there's a perspective, because remember, Israel has this creation narrative handed to them. And now, and the nations have seen how Adonai has destructed Egypt. And now they have seen how the Red Sea has been parted. And now in this creation narrative, we see how not only God creates everything, and there's no form, there's no specific identification for God himself, and there's no multiple gods. There's only one creator who has no body, no shape, who created everything perfectly, who planted a garden just like every other creation motif. But in this garden, he places men. And now man is not a slave. Man is the sole manifestation of God's image, right? And man is not a slave to fulfill God's personal desires, or you can say or to pamper God. Man is placed there to manifest more creation on behalf of God, which has a more important purpose than what other nations have, or other creation narratives have. And not only that, but now God says, I have judged men not because I feel like it, or because I had an argument with other gods and we did not come to a conclusion that we should rule specifically, or that we got tired of doing certain things. No, God says, in this flood narrative, I destroy creation because of their disobedience to me. And the only reason that creation or men survived because there was one just man, one righteous man that was willing to do my will, and that's who I saved. And so it's very hard to go in and out of the narrative, right? Because we see the creation narrative and we're sucked into how everything came to be in the what ifs. But we forget that there's a purpose for the narrative, right? There's the faith one, that we accept that this is how everything came to be, but there is the message that is being given, and there is the reaffirmation of our Creator's power, our Creator's dominance, our Creator's of righteousness, mercy, goodness, right? Because he has demonstrated all those characteristics in the beginning. He said everything was good, and he gave man the purpose and the ability to maintain it and sustain it as long as he obeyed heaven, right? Because that is the graphic that we have to maintain, right? Let's go back to the PowerPoint, because the PowerPoint is very clear, right? It says here, with knowledge and wisdom, God created the heavens. With his word, right? Isaiah says that his word will not come back to him empty, because it will fulfill his will. Yeshua is represented as the word of God. And Yeshua was sent with a purpose, and he didn't come back empty. He fulfilled that purpose. And we are called to be the word of God. And we're called to go and manifest his purpose and not come back empty. Knowledge joined heaven and earth. Heaven informs us. We express it and manifest it and support it. And as we show support to heaven, heaven covers us and protects us. It's a very beautiful diagram from the book of the Genesis, and the symbolism of symbolisms in Genesis. We'll put it in the description again. And also I used Ancient Near Eastern, the Bible Ancient Near East by John Walton. I'll put that in the description. I'll put all the books that I used for this teaching in the description. But we have to, as we accept God's word, we do like Noah. We embrace God's purpose. We go into the ark. And the ark, no matter in what chaos, no matter in the flood, right? Flood represents chaos, represents judgment to an extent. No matter how much we encounter that in the world, as long as we go into that ark, which is a representation of God's garden, is a representation of God's temple, is a representation of God's protection, right? But the ark was built on obedience. and the manifestation of God's word through Noah. And God says, if you manifest that word that I'm giving to you, I'll be with you, and I'll cover you, and I'll protect you, no matter what wickedness prevails in the world, because I am the creator of everything. So let's manifest, let's support, let's express heaven through us, and God will cover us and protect us. Hope that makes sense. I feel like I went really fast. If you would know at what time I record. But, so, like I always say, thank you for watching. Thank you for the support. We reach 100 subscribers. Thank you. Let's keep on supporting. Let's keep on growing. Let's keep on getting better. I don't know anything. I don't know everything. I just know what I know, and I do my best to express it and share it with you guys. And I thank you for listening. So, have a great week. Shavua Tov and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.